The elevator doors slid open with a crisp little chime like the universe itself was taunting me, and suddenly I was standing there, smack in the middle of the Luxec Industries lobby, clutching my ancient, scuffed-up leather folder to my chest so hard I could practically hear the resume inside whimpering. I remember thinking, well, Emily, you made it. No, try not to look like you bought your blazer at a thrift store 2 hours before the interview, which, is exactly what I'd done. This place was all steel and glass, everything shiny and intimidating, and the receptionist was like something out of magazine-high ponytail, nails like little daggers, and the kind of look that said, "You sure you're not here to deliver food?" But I just nodded, squared my shoulders, told her I was there for the junior AI developer interview, and did my best not to sound like I'd rehearsed that exact sentence in my head all morning. She sent me up to the top floor, barely hiding her skepticism. I rode that glass elevator up past the city skyline, watching my reflection bounce around the chrome, my hair pulled back, no makeup, just plain old Nebraska Emily, except maybe with a flicker of fire in my eyes I hadn't even noticed until then. My dad always said, "Don't let where you come from decide where you're going, kid." He'd say that while fixing the tractor at sunrise, grease on his knuckles and a mug of coffee in his other hand. That voice was in my ear the whole way up. When the doors opened, I walked straight into a scene out of some Silicon Valley fever dream floor-to-ceiling windows, sculptures that looked more expensive than my childhood home, and a boardroom table so glossy I could practically see my doubts in it. At the head of the table was Adrian Blake. If you know anything about tech, you've probably heard that name self-made billionaire, sharp jaw, always a step ahead, and somehow never out of breath. He didn't even bother looking up at first, just flicked through my resume like it might bite him. "Emily Carter," he said, still reading. "Farm kid, local college, part-time jobs. Irrigation app." His eyebrow finally twitched. "You coded a crop watering app during college?" I told him I had for local farmers open source. Nothing fancy, just solved real problems back home. Adrian let out a laugh, the kind that's half smirk, half challenge, like he's already made up his mind about you. "So, you think coding a farm app qualifies you for AI at Lux?" he asked, and everyone in the room kind of braced themselves like this was the moment I'd fold. But I didn't. I said, "I think innovation is about solving problems wherever they are." The room got quiet in that way you only notice after a thunderstorm tense. Waiting, he hit me with another round. "You think coming from a farm gives you an edge?" And I told him straight up, "Where I come from, you learn to fix things with what you've got. My solutions may be simple, but they work." Yeah, that happened. Suddenly, he was interested maybe in the way you'd poke at something you didn't expect to move. 10 minutes, he said, pointing at a workstation. "Let's see what you can do." I sat down, hands only shaking a little, and started working through a brutal algorithm. I'd seen tougher. Honestly, nothing like debugging a hay baler at 3 a.m. with your dad's old wrench. 8 minutes later, I stood up done. Adrian scanned the code, ran the test, and his whole face shifted. The thing didn't just work, it ran faster than their best models. I could see him wondering if I'd cheated, but I told him no, this was just what I'd done back home 100 times over. He thanked me, clipped like maybe I'd wasted his time, and dismissed me. On my way out, I heard him tell his assistant to run a background check on AgriSync app I'd built. If it's really her, call me. I almost laughed. What did he think I was a plant? I went home, changed back into jeans, and told myself not to get my hopes up. City folks like that didn't have room for farm girls who coded at the kitchen table. Except the very next morning, while I was helping Dad unload hay, my phone buzzed. Lux Tech. Adrian wanted to see me again. I barely had time to scrub the dirt off my hands before I was back in that glass palace. But this time, he wasn't smirking. He looked, well, almost apologetic, which I gotta admit, I didn't think billionaires did. He'd done his homework. He knew about AgriSync, how it was helping small farmers automate watering and save money all over the Midwest. "You could have sold this for millions," he said. I just shrugged. My dad always says, if you can fix something that helps people, you should. Not everything's about profit, right? The room actually went silent. That's how you know you hit a nerve in a place like that. Then, here's the twist: Adrian didn't just offer me a job. He handed me a contract and asked me to lead a whole new division focused on rural innovation. Farm tech, AI, the stuff nobody in the big city cared about. I thought he was joking, but the look on his face was dead serious. You don't belong behind someone else's keyboard, he said. You belong at the head of the table. I told him I had one condition: let me hire interns from rural colleges, kids like me who never get shot at places like Lux. He agreed. No debate, no negotiation. Just done. You know what I mean? Sometimes you meet people who surprise you actually listen. News spread as it does. The tech blogs loved it. Farm girl leads rural revolution at Lux Tech. I got calls from people I'd never met, old teachers, neighbors. Investors started sniffing around, curious how some country girl was shaking up the big leagues. But honestly, I couldn't care less about headlines. What mattered was seeing our ideas come to life: affordable weather-based irrigation, drone crop monitoring, AI that actually worked for real people, not just Fortune 500s. One night, a few weeks later, I walked past Adrian's office. He called me in. "You're making me look bad, Carter," he said, but he was smiling, pointing at a graph that was climbing so fast it made my head spin. "Our stock's never been higher." I laughed. "Guess we make a good team, then." And then he got quiet, more vulnerable than before. "No hard feelings about before." I shook my head. "You judged me, but you listened. That's more than most." Time went by, and things just kept moving. Adrian and I learned how to trust each other, in that odd way you only do when you've seen the other person's worst and still decide to stick around. One day, he grinned and told me, "This company needed a little dirt under its nails." And I shot back, "Maybe you just needed a reminder what real grit looks like." He didn't argue. Fast forward a few months, I am on stage at National Tech Conference, demoing our new AI suite for rural communities. Adrian's in the front row, but I barely even see him. What I see are the kids from small towns, the teachers, even a few of my old neighbors. "I was told barnyard grit doesn't belong in boardrooms," I said, "but brilliance can come from anywhere if someone's brave enough to see it." The applause was like a wave, but the best part was seeing Adrian smiling, not because he'd found me, but because he'd learned something too. You want to know the real kicker? Emily Carter, the so-called farm girl, is now running a division at one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And people are starting to remember what matters most: heart, humility, grit that doesn't quit. So, here's my question for you. Do you think success is about where you start? Or is it about what you're willing to do when nobody thinks you belong? Go on, tell me what you think. Let's get real. What does justice look like when the world's still run by people who forget where they came from?